Yeah, so I guess today's topic is it's all about how can we do the best job that we can at embracing and meaningfully engaging with our wider communities. We know that this is really important, but that doesn't mean that we're always doing it to the best of our ability. And we really want to be able to do that well. So we'll hear from our four speakers, and they'll share their inspiration from their work on how that can work well and some of the challenges that they encounter, and then perhaps some creative ways of overcoming those challenges. Um, so we have Aine Bird, who is the manager of Burren Bio Trust. We have Stephen Hayden, who is the chairperson and works on the ground in Ballymun City Farm. We have Amani Kamal, who is a fourth generation Palestinian refugee living here in Ireland, who engages with Sonairte Ecology Centre. And we have, last but not least, Davie Philip, who is living in Clackjordan Eco Village and runs the climate climate action coach project. And so Davie, you can tell us more about that as well, and Anya and Amani and Stephen. So maybe we start with Amani, if you'd like to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit more.
Yes, good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me today. My name is Amani Kamal Zakalla. I am originally from Palestine, and as you said, the fourth generation. I came to Ireland as a visit, just to visit my daughters in the time of COVID time, 2020. And I am a Palestinian academic. My background is public health policy and nutrition science. I care about the environment, and I did a lot for spreading the awareness about healthy lifestyles, healthy living, environmental health issues, and the climate change and other things. So I was academic, and all my life, besides being a licensed clinical dietitian in a hospital, and also a manager of a department of a facility called the clinical support department.
Amazing.
So this is my work, and I have a lot of papers which publish about the same topics. When I came to Ireland in 2020, I wasn't planning, or I haven't any idea about the refugee or anything. I just came with my youngest daughter, Miriam, to study in DCU because she was accepted in the university. I stuck, and then I found out that I am a stateless, because all my life I was born and raised in between Saudi Arabia, UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and also Boston in USA, because where I was taking my education and where I practice my medical license. So when I arrived to Ireland, of course, I know a lot about Ireland and the history of Ireland. I admire the background of being free after long, as a Palestinian. I care about this a lot, and politics is in my blood. I can't escape from it. So I care about the freedom that Ireland got at the end after long, work against the occupiers. However, the COVID issue is make me in a hot point, because every country, they return their own nation, they return their own people, they send airplane to take their people, and I stuck with my daughters. My daughter is studying, they having no problem, because another daughter joined, one came in December and the other one joined in January in different colleges. So I stuck here and nobody returned me. No one.
Amani,
Yes.
I just want to say
Yes, I will make it short. So I end up with being a refugee again, and I got my refugee status from the island. I get my residency. I am now settled. It's 4 years now. And my work with Sonairte was one of the best thing I did, and matching with my practice and my background. And beside being working in teaching in some time. But this is in short what I did.
Amazing. Thanks, Amani. And I was just going to say, we are very grateful here that you were stuck, although it causes all sorts of other issues and throws up a lot of other questions, but we're very grateful to have you here in Ireland and to have had you at Sonairte. Thank you so much for that. And maybe we'll hand it over to yourself, Stephen.
Hello again. I appreciate you having me with you today. My name is Stephen Hayden. I am the founder and current chairperson of the board of the City Farm and Community Gardens in Ballymun. We've been working for the last almost 7 years now to establish a city farm in the heart of Ballymun. We currently have a community garden, and we have agreed in principle to a site of just under 6 acres, right centrally located in the heart of Ballymun, for the development of a city farm, which will have, based on models that we visited in the UK, so it'll have a range of farm animals, community garden, wildlife areas, nature walks, farm shop, coffee shop, and it will be an educational and community engagement project, to try and provide opportunities for training and education and further employment for people within the catchment area and beyond, but also to raise awareness and provide education across a range of issues impacting on climate and the environment. So we've been working on that, as I say, for the last almost 7 years now. It's been quite challenging, and we might get into some of the challenges when we discuss the difficulties, perhaps, that I don't like the word disadvantaged communities, because there are other ways of describing communities. I'm a long-term resident in Ballymun. I'm an assistant principal officer in the Department of Justice, which is where I work, where I earn my bread day to day, so to speak. And I'm engaged in a variety of community activities locally in Ballymun, the principal one being the creation of a city farm, as I say, in the community. I think that's probably enough from me for now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Stephen. And then we'll jump to you, Anya. Thanks for being with us.
No problem. Delighted to be here. And yeah, we've gone on a bit of a tour of Ireland, and I'm going to take you over to the West Coast. I am speaking to you from Kinvara, in County Galway, and I have the great pleasure of managing the Burren Bio Trust. Some of you may be familiar with the organisation, but it is a independent, not-for-profit organisation founded in 2008. So we've been working away here for a while on a whole series of initiatives, broadly under the umbrella of place-based learning. So we really are focused on trying to provide opportunities for people to engage meaningfully with their local places. The heritage of their local places is kind of the lens that we take it through. So we look at built, natural and cultural heritage. And then more recently, it was always part of our work, but more recently, really moving into the space of supporting people taking action to, I suppose, enhance or improve, or, do something, I suppose, in response to that exploration of their local place. So whole series of initiatives, from very simple walks and talks to a little bit more complicated, now nationwide initiatives such as Farming for Nature Network, the Hare's Corner Biodiversity Initiative, and the Heritage Keepers community and schools-based learning programme. So that's it for now. Thanks, Nicola.
Thanks, Anya. I'm looking forward to hearing more about some of those projects. And Davie, over to you. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me. So I'm Davie Philip, and I've been a community sustainability advocate and activist since the 90s, working with different groups like FASTA, the Sustainable Economics Foundation, and then we ran a Sustainable Living and Learning Centre in Temple Bar for 9 years before we moved our co-op Cultivate, or Sustainable Ireland Cooperative, to Cloughjordan, where we're now based. I'm here today really sharing some insights from our CCAP Community Climate Action Programme, Community Climate Coaches, where we're piloting a programme for facilitating greater community well-being and climate resilience. We're very much focused on a bioregional approach, and we're piloting this in Tipperary with the Tipperary PPN and the 2 local development companies, with the hope that this will be replicated after the summer when we are clear on our findings. So I'm going to be sharing with you just some of the aspects that we did to ensure diversity, both in the community of practice that we brought together of Tipperary-based community workers and community activists from quite a wide, different sectors, quite a broad community of practice, who've been working for the last 8 months to build their capacity in facilitating change and understanding the climate issue, which I think is the way that we frame climate action right now, I think is freezing most people. And we really need to broaden that because we face a much bigger predicament, an ecological crisis that climate is one part of. And we're really going to have to build our local resilience to be able to cope with the shocks that we're locked into. And so the idea of making that community of practice diverse, bringing in voices, organizations and sectors that aren't normally reached on this issue, which with climate issues, that is most people. So that's what I want to share with you, the sort of findings so far on why having diversity is important, and how we considered that, and how we ensured that our project had a very diverse group of stakeholders.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Davie. And so Amani, I'm not sure if you're still with us. Yeah, Amani, we might go to you initially, and because it's just will be really interesting to hear your perspective as someone who's not from Ireland, who's relatively new to Ireland, and how did you find yourself at Sonairte at a land-based centre, and what were some of the gifts that brought you? How was that experience for you? We can look at maybe the positive first, and then the next question looks more at the challenges. If you want to talk about both in the first question, you're welcome to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, since I arrived to Ireland and I found myself already a resident as a refugee, because as I told you maybe in the introduction, that I was stuck, then I decided to stay first because I cannot return to anywhere. I am a stateless. So I end up with applying as a refugee for the justice. And then I got my refugee status to stay here. Since day one, I decided to get in and to fit into the community and not to just accept whatever. So I put myself in many programs, like, for example, programs preparing me for the to go back to the workforce. Workforce for me is very important. As a woman, I never stay at home, although I am a mother of 3, but I'm always working. So I went through a program in Ballymun, which preparing women called Shine Again. Shine Again. It's a wonderful program for 6 months. And there I went through a program talking about how to prepare us to go back to the workforce as a woman. And to prepare for everyone, refugee or not refugee. My name, in a way or another, introduced to Sonairte, and I was, they contacted me, I think through you, Nicola, and through Karen, and Karen talked to me about it, and she sent me an email about what Sonairte talking about, and she asked me if I am interested. I told her highly interested. It's exactly what I want to do. It's exactly what I love to do, and I like to volunteer in that place. So Ecology Centre,
this was to work on an educational program, wasn't it? To
yes, the Global Citizen Education Program.
Yeah, to speak to secondary school students on
yes.
Environmental and justice
yes,
issues.
And talking to the student about, and me, and I think you are in that time in maternity leave. I worked with Karen for 1.5 years, or so around 1 year, and then back to you. You know, working in such place is matching exactly with my background and my interest. We are talking, and in the beginning, I started with sharing my story as a refugee and why we became refugee. It's not a choice. It's a by force, and how it's happened and what's the history behind it. Exchanging the culture, talking about also the challenges the refugee going through. And one of the challenges is when your education is different. I mean, when you are looks different, when you have different background. This is one of the challenges that we really facing when we trying to get fit and to find job in Ireland. Like for example, of course, English is my not my first language, but I'm speaking English. But at the same time, my education in look, for example, my education in Boston, in USA. My university is one of the best universities, but still I'm not enough for the workforce. So I found this Sonairte is wonderful opportunity to get to know the people and to understand the culture and to talk to the student because they are the leaders of tomorrow. But I shared with them my experience, first of all, as a story and short story, how it started, how the war changing the world, how the war causing all these problems, how the conflict that the people paying the bill that they are not, like, for example, when I was born, I didn't choose to be a refugee. My both parents didn't choose even. Their grandfather, what happened that when the country was taken or occupied, it ended up with that the same thing happened to me when I was abroad, when I was born for them after 1967. So it's only about things happening in the world. For example, one of the things that we are always discussing when we talk about the environment, when there is poverty, there is also reason for that: wars, conflict, and also climate change. When the people cannot find jobs, they are escaping from the poverty to go somewhere else, and they are fleeing also from the war to go somewhere else. It's a human way of life. Sonairte give us the opportunity, the nature in Sonairte. I learned about a lot from the farmers. I was able to understand more what's the nature of Ireland. Actually, I love it. I love it from day one. I fall in love with the nature of Ireland from day one because this is really what I want. This is really what I love to see, that different kind of a climate and different kind, and I love to see the green. And I would love to help with keeping this and making it better. But one point made me a little bit feeling sad that why not everything, like I am Mediterranean. But in Middle East, like for Palestine, everything we grow, we should eat. We should be able to eat. So this is one thing that I was discussing with the farmers, that let us grow something we can eat at the end. It's give me flour, it will give me also the honey, it will give me everything. And this is one of the things. The other challenge I face beside my education and background is the changes in how to get fit, how to learn about the opportunities. And one of the things that I face is really when you are educated outside Ireland, you are not welcome in Ireland. You should repeat everything from scratch. You should do everything, even level 6. When you are applying with level 9 or 10, they will ask you what you have and what's your background. Back to the Sonairte. Sonairte, when I started working with the student and discussing with them the things that they are going around, like for example, when we are trying to show them that many plants that we have around, it can be a survival plant and we can use it to eat and to grow. At the same time, it's helped us to keep the climate and to keep also the environment with the temperature which we are facing right now. From this,
and I just
Yes.
particularly love the Amani, the cultural experience of food and how you shared that with the students as well, and your
Yes.
knowledge of the herbs and the medicinal qualities of them. And I think
Yes.
that is really inspiring as well, and was a really important piece. But just because we're running low on time, I'm
Yes.
going to stop you there and thank you
Okay,
for your
thank you.
sharings. And I think we'll bring Stephen, can we bring you in now? Because I feel like you have such a close link, having grown up in the community that you're working in. And you'll just have to unmute yourself, just a reminder. But I'd love to hear what kind of brings you greatest joy in working with your communities, and is there any story that's in your heart right now to share of the positive impact of that, and the benefits that are just so important for us to celebrate.
Yeah, I suppose there are two things I would mention here. One positive, one negative. And if we're talking about how we engage as broad a church as possible within our community, for want of a better term, and try to reach as many people as possible, including those who may be marginalised for one reason or another, and for who, climate action and saving the environment is a luxury that really they can't afford, or they just don't have the emotional wherewithal to engage with it because their daily struggle is just too much. And so there's a lot of issues down that I would see within my community where the idea of climate action and saving the planet is just too big. It's just too big. It's that's just too big to grasp. And so really what you need to do, I think, from our perspective, is to make the issue relevant and to make it to connect the individuals to the actions that they can take and the benefits that can arise from that. It has to have some beneficial impact on their lives. And the idea that you might save the polar caps, stop that melting, is irrelevant if you're trying to put food on the table, or you're trying to deal with a difficult family situation, or you have a child who doesn't want to attend school, and you're struggling with all of those stresses and strains. Now, we all have those stresses and strains, but depending on your socioeconomic background, your level of education, all of those things, your skill set in being able to deal with that, and then being able to step back from those issues and look at the broader issues that impact on society is far greater. So we need to understand that we need to engage people. And one of the things I found in my community in dealing with officialdom, and I admit I'm a civil servant, so I'll hold my hand up to my part in all of the faults that go with that. But my experience in dealing with agencies is that there is absolutely no belief in the capacity of so-called disadvantaged or marginalised communities to do anything. And what's needed is the equivalent of a civil society missionaries who will come in and help the disadvantaged community to resolve its problems. And there is some value in that. The approach we have taken, because we're all locals and we have brought in external expertise, people who've come on board where we've identified gaps in our skill set. But the approach we have taken is to look at the assets that exist within our community. And because Ballymun is not a community that's viewed as a community with a lot of assets, there are perceptions that everybody sitting here, when you hear Ballymun, it will bring to mind certain images. So we took the view that we would look at the assets, the existing skill sets and assets, physical and otherwise, that exist in our community, and we would develop a project around utilizing all of those assets and benefits that would bring a benefit to the community and would have educational and environmental benefits, but would also be able to break down the environmental challenges we have into very achievable and very achievable and understandable actions. So, for example, in the community garden that we would have children from the local schools and preschools who will come in, and their engagement, for example, with fresh fruit. I remember one instance where we had a group of young kids in, and we got the young kids to dig up. They were potatoes, just digging up potatoes, and they all got to dig up these potatoes, and they took the bag home. And it's not an exaggeration to say they marched out of the garden, with a real sense of pride that they were bringing home potatoes. That this was a relatively small action, but not something they'd ever done before. But it was directly transferable to their own situation, and they could bring this home and present it to their parents as something that they had brought home. We have them in the polytunnel where they're, we had another group in, all full of bravado. They had never eaten fresh peppers or chilies. And all of them, of course, were far braver than they perhaps should have been, and all insisted that they could handle a chili. And all, they all took a bite, and there were various reactions amongst them. But what it did was, they're very small, but they're transformative experiences. These are experiences where young children are accessing food. They're learning that it's relatively easy to produce this food. They're experiencing tastes that they haven't experienced before. They're being exposed to foods that perhaps they wouldn't normally be exposed to. And they're learning the benefits of that, as well as the benefits of being outdoors with other children and learning how to work together, to resolve conflict, to grow and produce food, and the pride that instills to be able to produce your own food and take it home. All of these things are hugely transformative to children who wouldn't normally have those experiences. And so in terms of building a community and building solidarity within that community and building expectation and raising the horizons of the children that you deal with, the idea of the city farms to open up pathways to future education or training or careers that children in Ballymun and Finglas wouldn't necessarily imagine as something that would be in their future. And what we're about is raising those expectations and raising those horizons and opening up opportunities. And by doing that, you make the environment an essential part of their lives. You instill a love for biodiversity. You instill a love for the outdoors. And that is sustainable then throughout their lives. And then they transfer that to their children. And it has a ripple effect throughout the community. And I've said many times, when we have the city farm up and running and we've established it in Ballymun and people see the benefits of it, that template can be taken and replicated across the city, across not just this city, but across other cities in Ireland. And as I say, by creating something that provides training, education and opportunities for community engagement, including for our migrant community, who have a huge amount to contribute in terms of their experience and their broader experience of food and different cultural approaches to food. All of that will have a massively transformative effect. And I'll just finish on the negative, if I can, having given all the positives. I mentioned the difficulty we have encountered over the years, and the most significant difficulty we encounter, as I say, is a lack of belief in decision makers that a community such as Ballymun has the capacity to change its own future. And the only way that communities like Ballymun will have a sustainable new direction and a positive future is if the community delivers on that. And we need to move to a stage where it isn't external experts and external agencies coming in and presuming to know what the community should do, and understanding that the community needs to lead the change. And if the community leads the change, what you do is you have communities then who, when we achieve the city farm, others in the community will look to that and say, that was achieved by locals. That's a really significant project that's transforming lives. That was achieved by local residents. What can we do next? Instead of sitting back and waiting for something to be delivered, and then when it isn't delivered, taking that as that reinforces your negative belief that nothing can be done for you and that the state's failing you. So relying on the state to deliver when the state has consistently failed this community just reinforces all the negative attitudes that we have. So it needs to be led by the community. It needs to be delivered by the community. And by doing that, you raise a level of knowledge and expertise and skills within the community that then creates and has a ripple effect in terms of creating other projects. So that's, sorry, I probably went on a little bit long there. I turned into a bit of an evangelist when I started talking about the city farm, so you'll have to excuse me. But that's roughly it. So anyway, I'll finish there.
No, it's so lovely to listen to you, Stephen, and amazing work that you're doing. And even like just to comment on the having kids in at the preschool age, like don't they say that if you get children before the age of 7, if they have exposure to nature and wildness, and if they're nature connected at that age, then you've kind of caught them before it's too late, and it's just a massive gift. And even like, you know, community projects can take, when they're community led, it can take more time, but it's the end is like, I mean, we're involved in a community led project to put trees on our streets where I live, and there was a lot of resistance, and there was, you know, door to door knocking, and it was just one street, and it was like we journeyed along together, and, you know, went back and forth, and, you know, had all these important discussions, and now everyone just feels so proud of the trees on their street. And it's just a small example, but thank you so much for all of your words and highlighting all of that. And so, Anya, can we go to you, and maybe you can share a little bit about some of your experience working with your local community and wider communities?
Yeah, thanks so much. And Stephen has nearly said it all in some ways. And it's funny as I was listening to him, how similar actually. There's so many similarities. And I also could find real resonance with what Amani was saying. Because what we are essentially doing is looking to build a love of place, a pride of place, or enhance it, or reinvigorate that where it's not always the case. And I think there's a few things that came up for me, and I think worth mentioning. I think it'll probably be the same across all contexts. Is that really importantly for us is that like community and our community are in no way homogenous. There's an assumption that, oh, you're in the Burren, it's a rural community, you're farmers. And that really is not the case at all. Very, very diverse community. Some people here all their lives and some people very newcomers to the place. And what we found to be really brilliant is that by offering opportunities for place-based engagement, it's kind of a leveling of the playing field that everybody can come in, and particularly I've seen this working with local schools, and the school population in the time that I've been here is just unrecognizable from when I started. There's a really diverse population in the local schools, but what we've seen is that working with the primary schools around here now, and actually replicated across Ireland when we work in the schools, is that idea of learning about your local place together. And again, coming back to what Stephen is saying, like, I do not come in as I'm the expert, I'm going to tell you what you need to know about your place. It's about saying, let's ask questions about our place, and I might point you in the direction of a few tools or resources, how for you to then discover the bits of your place that are relevant or interesting to you. And that gives each child or each community member, if we're working with adult groups, the chance to kind of follow the strands of it that mean something to them and that they connect to, and looking to find that hook, I suppose, for people that makes their place become something more than just a physical space, because that's really what we're working towards. And then in doing that as well, it's been really lovely to see fresh perspectives, that again, we can make assumptions that this is how things have always been and how they should always be, but by inviting a wider conversation and opening it up, you get some really great new ideas brought to the table. That also then allows for the sharing of skills and resources. And I loved again what Amani was saying about, the kind of sharing of particular cultures or traditions from other areas, and food cultures and traditions, and marrying them. And that can apply or happen across a whole range of topics in terms of local places. So we've seen that really be very useful. And then the other thing that I was kind of thinking on as Stephen in particular was talking was the idea of, first of all, community stewardship, which is really what we are, working towards, where communities are genuinely stewards of what happens in their local place. And yeah, probably in some ways trying to circumvent and get past the issues that have been in place for years in terms of people wanting things and not being able to achieve it, and just developing that sense of agency. So I've been doing a bit of work kind of on that, and looking at, the dimensions that we kind of need in place if we are going to realistically expect and ask communities to take on these roles. And knowledge, obviously, that would make sense that people need some knowledge, but like what kind of knowledge and how it's delivered, that it's relevant and tailored to the particular needs is really, really important. The other piece is that love, that care piece, the emotional connection. And there's often a discussion about which comes first. Do you care because you know more, or do you find out more because you care? And won't get too hung up on that. The other one that is then important, as I was kind of saying, is that there has to be agency. So it has to be a realistic ask that if you are expecting a community, whether it's a school or whoever it is, to take something on, if the supports aren't in place realistically for them to do it, it's actually oftentimes, I think, worse to have even asked the question, because that just adds to the sense of disempowerment. So looking at, being realistic in the ask, but also that's where organisations, I suppose, like Burren come in, that we can provide some of that support, whether it's through grants or through information. And there were two other pieces that kind of came through when I was looking at that work, is also that very often, and it's something that really rings true in the Burren, is the idea of kind of, again, the outside perspective, but a facilitated process to get to the point of deciding what we want and where we could go. And that can be really, really useful because you can be the person who comes in and asks the awkward questions and just doesn't take it for granted that, like I said, things are the way they are and always will be. And that's really what happened here at the very start of the Burren Bio story, that there was a PhD student that came to the Burren and took the radical step, unbelievable as it may seem, of actually listening to the people that were in the Burren and genuinely listening and hearing and having a respectful conversation around what might be needed on the ground and how things might work and how they might be better. And then, we're all these buzzwords, but like the kind of co-creation then of a solution, and it really made a difference. But I think having that outside eye was very useful in those early days. And again, coming back to what Stephen said, and a big part of what we do as well is, again, if you're trying to empower people, as you said, trying to fix the big problems and trying to even get our head around some of these big problems can be quite off-putting. So focusing on the smaller wins and the things that we can achieve in the hopes that it builds that sense of active citizenship, builds networks, builds a sense that we are not doing this on our own, that we're part of something bigger, and collective action can be really empowering. So yeah, that they were that there's some of the things that I think are what we found from our work, and that I think kind of cross over with what's been mentioned already.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Anya. I'd love to pull more out of so much of what you said. And so Davie, I'd say we'll just jump straight to you, because I'd say all along the same lines, but you can give us more of a picture from your perspective as well and your experience. Thank you, Anya.
Yeah, thanks, Anya, Stephen, and Amani. There's some great insights there. Our community climate action program really is setting out to build the capacity of local stakeholders, diverse local stakeholders, to able to lead a process in their wider communities. And I think there's a great quote by Bill McKibben who says that the most important thing an individual can do about climate is stop acting as an individual. And so we've had the power of one, and we've had all sorts of activities that encourage us to change our light bulbs and turn our appliances off and drive an electric car, which just doesn't seem, when you see the scale of the predicament we're in, appropriate responses. So our project really has been building the capacity of these community climate coaches to facilitate engagement around these ecological issues. And I say ecological in the widest term. I mean, I've spent 25 years telling people I'm not an environmentalist. This is really important that we don't just see this as an environmental issue. This is an environmental, social, and economic issue. In fact, if we don't actually challenge the economy, then we're not going to respond well to this issue, because that growth-based extractive economy is what's driving most of the impacts, extracting wealth, fragmenting communities, and destroying nature. So we need to start to think a bit wider about the issue. Also, I think the diversity approach ensures that you're getting a variety of perspectives. You're getting different views from people's different lived experiences. You're getting more knowledge and understanding from different sectors' needs. So I think it's so important to build that diversity in these sort of projects right from the start. I think, as Stephen said, it's really important to make these relevant to people, because most people can't think about the end of the world. They can barely think about how to get through the rest of the week. And so we need to make these issues relevant. And we frame climate action as everything you're going to give up, everything you have to let go of, and everything that we have to reduce. Where really the response here is building stronger communities, being able to develop warmer homes, tastier and more nutritious foods, local farmers and local food producers, building stronger local economies. This is actually relevant to everyone, as is reducing emissions and energy. I'm not negating the need for mitigation. I'm just saying we rarely focus on resilience, climate resilience and climate justice, which we're going to start seeing. We also have to build, especially now, some hope for a future, and not just hopium, oh, I hope everything will work out, but actual active hope where we can get engaged. So our project really is focused around community-led initiatives, which we don't actually hear much about these sort of initiatives in our media, but they're the sort of initiatives that people in local areas can step into. Things like Stephen saying, community gardens or community farms, community supported agriculture, repair cafes, food co-ops, energy co-ops, retrofit co-ops. The Bohemians in their CCAP project are looking for Phibsborough a retrofit co-op that people can scale up and be able to retrofit houses, and CSA, a community supported agriculture, where working with local farmers, we do food security. And like community gardens, these sort of initiatives don't just provide resilience or food or energy, they actually build community. And there's where we're lacking. Our communities are atomized, fragmented, and we can't do anything really together now. We've lost the ability to cooperate. And really, this is crisis of imagination, isn't it? We can't even imagine doing anything in any other way than currently serves this growth-based extractive economy. So we have been focused on, with our coaches, and just to say a little bit about the diversity of our coaches, we put a big focus on this. We employed a diversity animator as well as a community animator, and we've been in an 8-month community of practice with over 40 local people in Tipperary. I really feel that sort of making sure that our community of practice had younger people, older people, LGBTQ people. We have a number of small conventional farmers. We have retired school principals. We have people from new communities and refugees, the Roma community. And it's just been a much richer experience by having that diversity of perspectives and backgrounds. Our coaches in this communities of practice are developing their facilitation skills. We did a community engagement and participation special course with some key people, and they're building their capacity to lead a community engagement campaign. And we're really framing this campaign on the need to build climate resilience and local well-being. So we're focused and starting with nature connection. Most climate groups or climate ambassadors will start a process in their local community with the climate facts and science, show a really frightening video and scare the bejesus out of people, and wonder why no one's coming back to engage. So as Stephen said, making these things relevant. Community gardens are fantastic for this. Place-based initiatives that people can step into is important. That first session on nature and place connection is important because part of our problem here is that we are so disconnected from the living world and see ourselves as separate from nature. We need some processes to go deeper into that and to realize that we're part of nature. And we need, as Anya was saying, to fall back in love with nature and connect more deeply to ourselves, to each other, and the natural world. Our next piece in our community engagement campaign, though, is identifying community-led initiatives. Because we've got a number in Tipperary, from repair cafes and toy libraries to eco-demonstration farms to the many things you'll see in Clough-Jordan Eco Village that are community-led. So we're trying to identify these, map them so we can support them more. And our final event then is conversations and good dialogue processes and conversational processes. So we have a session where we hear the stories from the people engaged in these community-led initiatives, as well as the conversations that will lead to some pathways to get more of these sort of local grassroots community-led processes in their communities. We did a lot of research in engagement and how to maximize diversity. There's some great resources. Pub will have a resource that we use a lot, a guide for inclusive community engagement in local planning and decision making. And that the last piece of that's a little misleading, local planning decision making. A lot of it is how to reach out, to identify the barriers, overcome these barriers, to engage people in processes. A lot of it is peer production or co-production, or doing things together, developing something together, not just a project that's brought in from the outside, but is led, developed by diverse representatives of our communities. So we identified a number of barriers to participation, and with our diversity animator and community animator worked out how we could maybe overcome some of those. We started out with our seldom heard or harder to reach community definitions from SICAP, the social inclusion, but we realized with these issues, almost everyone is harder to reach or seldom heard. So we really identified other groups to add to that, like small farmers, new communities, which were has been a real richness when you've got perspectives from different countries. So I think identifying the barriers to participation and engagement early on in your project and designing in ways to, and I can talk a bit more about that as we go a bit deeper in, but maybe I'll just stop there for now. Okay.
Thank you, Davie. That's all so fascinating. I'm so curious about the place-based aspect and the locality that you're each working in, and maybe to dive in a little bit more deeper to that. Yeah, I'm curious, just because you were just on Tipperary, Davie, and the new communities that you spoke about. Maybe you could just respond, if you don't mind. Just
no, it's a really good because we did 2 years with European Consortium of regenerative practitioners and permaculturists and transition town eco-village types across Europe, and we came up with a framework. But we also realized that for the sort of acceleration of these type of initiatives and this sort of climate resilience, climate justice, and community well-being, that we needed to move beyond the street and one community. We needed to see the strengths of the wider bioregion. So our coaches are in Tipperary. We have 5 municipal districts. They're actually working in hubs in each municipal district, and will deliver those 3 workshops in each municipal district as a sort of bioregion. So that we actually see those connections, those relationships, those strengths across the wider region as bringing more place-based activities and more initiatives that can be led by local people and provide some of the food security, energy security, care that we are so dependent on from either very vulnerable long supply chains or institutions that are very large, like the HSE. So can we do more for ourselves? That's, I suppose, our question. And can we do that place-based activities, not just in the individual town and village and street, but in the wider bioregion? That's really
okay. Thank you so much. I'm reminded of, just from the various things that you were all speaking about, I'm reminded of Anya, just to go back to what you said, which comes first? Is it knowledge of the issue or care for the issue, or vice versa? And I was reminded of through a program, it's called The Art of Mentoring. Some of you might have come across it. It's an American-based program, but on how to connect with nature. And one of the activities, we did a weekend workshop years ago in Ireland, and one of the activities was just to take all of your knowledge out of your head about a particular plant, and you had to engage with this plant, and you had to ask so many questions about it, all of the questions that you could come up with from all the different angles, and they could be ridiculous, or it was just like to take that pressure away, and you did it in a pair, and it was just the most beautiful kind of heart opening, if I can say, like experience. And you kind of really got to know this plant, and it kind of, from someone who felt like, oh, like I don't remember the name of all these species, and I really want to be nature connected, and am I? And it kind of reminded me of that innate connection, you know. And yeah, I suppose I'm just thinking about the Burren as such a unique landscape, and what are some of the gifts that you have encountered through through the groups that you're linked in with in the Burren.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about that. So there's a lot of work. And I mean, I came up through the school of environmental education, and that was going to cure all ills. And if people knew, then they would be better. And if we could just, the old image we've probably all seen of the teacher pouring the knowledge into your head, and then all was well with the world. And I think now at this stage we all know that that is very, very far from the truth. And thankfully, there are some people moving on from it, but probably not half as fast as we need to, or it's not as comfortable, I think, for a lot of people. So there's a lot of work going on in a really interesting research group in the University of Derby, looking at the idea of nature connection, very specifically. And they've come up with a scale. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I'm not sure at times how I feel about having to measure these things, but I understand why we need to. But yeah, they have come up with a scale where you can measure how connected, you are to nature and so on. And really what they found is, and I'm probably wildly oversimplifying it, but in general, it is, as you said, it's about taking time, noticing, rather than our fixation on kind of naming, and again, recognizing how disempowering that is, that particularly if we're maybe thinking about teachers bringing young people out to connect with nature. Most teachers, like I studied botany in college. I could go out in the Burren and I wouldn't be able to name half the things that are out there. But it's being comfortable with that and saying that that's not the ultimate aim here. And that the aim is just about coming back a couple of steps and yes, sitting with it, taking time, noticing. But the other thing that I think is important to mention, and it's come up there a little bit about relevance, and again, that's where I think taking a very local approach and thinking about very local relevant actions that people can take can be useful. But another one that we found, again, and it might not be, I suppose, applicable across the board, but that, again, to make an assumption that all of us have that sense of connection to nature and biodiversity is not a fair assumption. And that what we have found actually in our work and in working with our community groups across the Burren and Ireland is that very often it's the human aspect of a place that people will relate to or respond to. So again, it's been touched on a little bit, but like finding the roads in, whether it's through cooking or food, as we've been talking about, herbs and the traditional use of plants. Again, we're kind of, well, I was going to say we were spoiled in the Burren, but from working with communities all over Ireland, I can assure you that it's actually replicated all over Ireland in terms of the richness of local built monuments and kind of the evidence of the people who have come before us, and taking that long-term again view of like how our places have developed and evolved over time, and us being kind of a very small piece of this whole story of place. And whether it is through kind of, an exploration more of human history, and how that's evolved as a way in. And again, it also makes me think of another kind of very deliberate approach that we have in our work. And it speaks to what Davie was saying there about hope, is that we, where at all possible, focus on celebration. So come with there are good things happening. And one example I would give, which people may be familiar with, would be our Farming for Nature network. And it's exactly that. It's a network of farmers all over Ireland, all farming systems from, very small market gardens to big conventional tillage farms. But where and again, very deliberate that these are people who make their living from farming, so it's not negating the kind of economic necessities, but that there are ways of doing it differently. There are people who are out there who are trying to do something. And again, I have found in this work that it can be very easy to be really dogmatic, and we come in saying, "Oh God, I see you're doing that, but that's not enough. You should do more, and you should be trying harder. And should be perfect." That really disempowers as well. I think recognizing that in an awful lot of cases, people are trying and celebrating that. And the other nice thing with that network, which has come up mentioned in the comments as well, is that it's very much a peer learning space. So again, if we're trying to engage with the community, such as farmers listen to and respond to other farmers far more readily than a fella landing in a suit. You don't need me to tell you that. So again, replicating that peer learning opportunity and finding ways of building resources. Again, going back to what I said, that there's more information available now than we could ever need, but is it relevant and tailored to the particular audience? So farmers developing resources for farmers has been really, really an important part of that. And what I've loved about the Farming for Nature network is that it's that cliche of like, if you can see it, you can be it. And how inspiring it is for we've people coming to us saying, I never would have thought of doing this, but because I saw somebody else saying this is okay and being celebrated for that, and it makes it acceptable. And then they put, they dip their toe in the water, and then literally like within a year they've put in 5 or 6 wildlife ponds and have converted to organic. So it's coming at it from multiple ways, and finding ways of sharing that story alongside the bad story, which I know also needs to be told. But again, I keep diverting because there's so many things that come in. But the last one that I wanted to actually say, because again I saw it mentioned in the comments, which I think is really important, and it's probably a slightly new step for us and others maybe far more established in this field, but is that idea of using arts as a way of engaging the wider community. And the Creative Ireland have a Creative Climate Action fund, which we received money from this year. But it's been really interesting to think about that, and to think about how you use art and creative practice meaningfully, and also then thinking about how we move from mindset change to behavior change, and whether art has a role to play in that space. So yeah, there's a lot of, again, new things coming all the time. We're changing, developing new ideas, building on some of the things that are there, and we've seen to be successful.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'm also reminded down at the Burren on the day in September when we had the gathering, the Burren College of Art hosted a gathering as part of this project, and there was a lot of talk about the Celtic festivals and the Celtic Wheel, and celebrating, again, what you were speaking about, the importance of celebration, and a couple of groups who are using spectacle as well, and the spectacle associated, the mythology associated with these different times, and the gifts that also holds. And then on a practical level, and I'm thinking of you, Stephen, and your harvest festival as well, and how you guys seem to be doing a really great job as well, using celebration in your work to draw more community in. So I don't know if you want to speak a little bit on that or anything that's come up, because we are coming towards the end. So we'll hear from you, Stephen, and then Amani. But you have time, so
I'll try to be I'll try to keep it as brief as I can.
Thanks,
yeah, I think in talking about the place in which we live, one of the difficulties we have in very urban communities, and if everybody's familiar with the kind of the standard images of Ballymun when there were the tower blocks and the flats, and it was a very grey, imposing environment. And there's no doubt that your physical environment impacts on everything. It impacts certainly on your mental and physical health. It impacts on the perceptions of your community from people outside of a community, and therefore impacts on where you go in the world, and how you're viewed in the world, and and the opportunities that open up to you. So when we take Ballymun, for example, we start from a very low base, in the sense that there were large sections of the community who didn't have a garden, who didn't have an outside space, and who suddenly find themselves in a house with a garden. And there's no history of gardening. But even if you look at the evolution of gardens and the history of garden design, it tends to be, if you look at the more affluent areas of Dublin, they'll be well maintained gardens with a variety of plants and quite a bit of biodiversity. And if you go to a local authority housing estate, you'll just have grass, if indeed you have grass. And so in terms of trying to develop from a low base and engage people, what's really important is there has to be enjoyment, there has to be joy, there has to be excitement. And I think Davie touched on this, that an awful lot of the climate discussion is a kind of a finger wagging exercise that tells you what you must do. It's a bit like knowing you have to lose weight, but dreading the fact that you have to go on a diet. You know you have to do this, but it feels like a punishment. And I think that all of the environmental things we talk about feels like a punishment. So we need to make it enjoyable for everybody. And one of the things we can do in urban areas is to start to transform in small ways the outside spaces that people have around them, and to make those, if you can go from a grey, imposing, unattractive environment to a beautiful environment that's well planted up, that gives some sort of instinctive joy to the people who are living there, then that's the first stepping stone. There has to be an emotional connection and a desire to do it. And if you can get some joy from your physical environment, you're more inclined then to want to keep that as it is and to improve it and to make a contribution yourself. So it needs to be achievable. So some of the things we try to do are small scale activities along those lines. And we have a spring show and we have a harvest festival. And that brings farm animals in. It brings a range of community organizations in. We have stalls showing traditional crafts. We have, chutneys and jams, all of the things you would imagine. And we have music and we have face painting. And we try to create a fun, enjoyable family event or event for the entire community to come along to. And we have community organizations from men's sheds to senior citizens groups we have a ladies' bowls club, we've a boxing club, we have the whole range. And we try to create opportunities where people who can connect with something in their community and therefore start to open the door for community engagement, particularly after COVID. But it's very difficult for people, I think, and I know from having joined, quite a few organizations in my time, that the stepping through the door into an organization where you are the stranger on the first evening is very, very imposing. Even if it's a very welcoming group, it's still a big step. And a lot of people find that an extreme challenge, and particularly after COVID. And so lots of people want to do things and they know they should do things, but the only options that seem to be available to them are things that are going to be, like I say, a punishment. So we try to create an opportunity for community engagement where there are stalls. So you can come down and wander around and have a cup of tea and listen to the music. And if you want to wander over and talk to somebody on the men's sheds or one of the other community organizations, it allows you to dip your toe, to make a physical connection with people who are there, so that when you step through the door, when you decide to go down, the faces are familiar to you and they know who you are. And you break the ice there. And that's the first objective in terms of giving people an opportunity for community engagement, is to make it accessible, is to go out to the community and make it possible for them to make those connections. And I think sometimes organizations, as I say, I've been in plenty over my many years, you get a little bit insular and you kind of say, well, we've told everybody on our social media we're here on a Thursday evening, where are they? If they want to get involved, they can come down. That's really not the way to do it. We have to make it accessible and we have to make it enjoyable, and we have to leave people go away and think, yes, I want to go back. I want to be involved. I want to make a difference. And so I think it starts with joy and an emotional connection, and you build from there. That would be my view.
Yeah, I love that, Stephen. Thanks so much. And I think it would be lovely to go to Amani for just a short piece. I think if we go back to place-based,
Yes.
and just because we're so lucky to have you amongst us, a Palestinian, and the really rich culture that you hold, and maybe you could share some aspect of your culture that might inspire us here in Ireland in the work that we do in our place-based centres and our places.
Yes.
Yeah, is there any short piece that you'd like to share with us from your
Yes,
country, ours?
when I joined Sonairte, the National Ecology Centre, in 21, 22, until 23, until last year, actually, Youth for Change project gave me the ability to share also my culture with and the nature culture and the nature information with the colleagues and with the students. And I would love to really to have such, involvement, especially in the young age. So I remember from my experience when we are working with the Youth for Change project, as we talked, and many of my lovely, I learned a lot from you, all of you today, that starting from the early age is really wonderful. That involvement in involvement, having different background and background cultures to be involved also in the environment issue and in the early age with the student will make it a big difference. So working with that Youth for Change project, which is with a connection with the activity, with the environment, like teenager, and understanding their potential effective change makers or for healthy lifestyle, and discussing with them also how to empower the citizen to understand that it is in our world, how to involve the world issues and the global issues, and how it's affecting our nature, how we are affected directly if the oil prices goes up somewhere, or if there is environmental issue somewhere, we are one plant and everyone will be affected. This is a very important element in any project, the involvement, the education. So this element of the project, with participation of residents of our local community, different background, as we said, different ideologies, and also different centers, and put them together in a program that, like the program in the academic year, and make it give it to the student in interesting way and little bit free way and wild way, that they can practice what they love to do. And this is exactly what I saw in Sonairte experience, and I would love to keep that. How we can cook our cultural food, how to use the Ireland resources, even our cultural food. And this is exactly what I was exchanging with the student when we are talking to them, and not in a lecture way, but in a workshop style. It's really wonderful experience, and I encourage really to make it like a very important element in any educational program. And this kind of freedom to visit the like, for example, Sonairte Ecology Center or any other center or similar centers, that the student can practice visiting and understanding what that trees means, what that trees can give me, what's the meaning of this element of a plant, how I can use this plant to eat or to survive, or this how the small green things can make my environment better. But I was happy to see to actually in the first year we saw about in just the last year we saw 400 students, and we were able also to exchange the knowledge with them and exchange the culture and to talk to them. And I found really wonderful and positive feedback from the student, especially when they come to me with questions and asking about the situation and how to mix those things, environmental issue, global issues together, to give them the knowledge and to give them the ability to discuss issues and to exchange also their knowledge. And this is what I was happy to listen, that they have also their own knowledge and their own feedback, and we are also taking these ideas and discussing it again with them in a free and wild way and simple way. This is lovely.
Thank
And
you, Amani.
like involving also cooking and kitchen and you know.
And Amani, I
yes.
remember as well the sea, just you using the sea beet that's growing wild along the River Nanny and bringing it home and integrating it into one of your
This is
traditional
yeah, it was
cuisine
really
meals as
wonderful
well.
experience. Every
Thank
time
you.
we go for a walk, I
Mm.
collect some grasses and try to cook them at home and using it my own cultural food and exchange this experience with the others.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we're coming up on time, so I think unless any of our speakers have any last minute points that they'd like to share, it'd be lovely if we could go to any questions that might have come in through the chat. Or if anyone would like to unmute themselves and ask any questions to any of our four speakers.
So,
sorry,
Nicola,
yeah.
not a lot of questions have come in through the chat. It's mostly just comments, but maybe if anybody wants to ask a question, just put your hand up and we'll get to you, or even make a comment. Julie has raised her hand. Do you want to come in, Julie?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed hearing everyone speak. Thank you. I think one of the words that I haven't heard today and that maybe I missed was just meaning. And I think for me, all of these things that we're talking about, all these activities, I know they give my life meaning. And I think like talking about meaningful transactions make meaningful lives. And so that's something that is, I think, is important part of this work as well. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much, Julie. Yeah. And I'm curious, like I wonder in the last space, unless anybody else has a question, I'm so curious about like how did each of you come to this work? Like, was it through a fear of, or did you have the luxury of having, grown up in a place where you had someone to help you feel connected with nature, or you were mentored into that, or yeah, like what was it? I'm really curious, what was it that brought you to this work? I don't know, Davie, I see you nodding, so I'm gonna go to you.
I'll come in. I think my journey to this work may be a little different from most. I wasn't an environmental scientist. I spent most of my 20s riding skateboards professionally. And then I went to India for 2 years meditating. And it was that taste of interbeing, that sort of interdependence, that oneness, that when I went to university in Maynooth as a mature student and studied anthropology and saw Richard Douthwaite's book, both books, Short Circuit and Growth Illusion, that I saw his whole systems approach to sustainability, and that's how you could work with interbeing and interdependence. And so that's, whenever I discovered that 25 years ago, that's what I've been committed to, a sort of whole systems approach to sustainable community, seeing ecosystems. And it really ties into Thich Nhat Hanh's work or other people that are promoting this sense of interbeing. And I do think that deeper shift, a worldview shift, is almost a spiritual shift. It's moving from an individualist, reductionist worldview to an ecological worldview where we see the connections and relationships and how important that is. So slightly different, I think, than probably most people's journey.
Oh, no, that's really lovely to hear. I did not know you were a professional skateboarder in your youth, and I didn't know you went to India and it changed tracks for you altogether. Thanks for sharing that. I was almost thinking maybe we could begin the whole webinar with that question, and maybe it would have been a nice way in as well. I wonder, does anyone else want to share of our, do we still have
I mean, I suppose
yeah,
I have a rather convoluted path. I started off as a young kid in Ballymun. We moved to Lucan when I was a kid. Now I've spent probably the vast majority of my life here because I moved back because my wife is a lifelong resident of Ballymun, so I'm here a long, long time. But we moved to Lucan and we were surrounded by fields, farms, orchards, and there's absolutely, it wasn't structured in any way. It was just the freedom probably freedom that parents would ring the social services about now. But we had the freedom to go away with groups of us. We would just go off with our friends, disappear into the fields, and there's that sense of freedom and connection that's just instinctive, I think, in everybody. And given the opportunity, you don't need a structured way to nurture that. I think it's there in us. It's innate. So I think given an opportunity to engage in that, and then I've been, I suppose, a very working class background. I've been quite political, to put it mildly, all my life. I've been involved in one organisation or another, very active trade unionist, very active in the community. I studied horticulture, and I suppose all of those things combined to, when Ballymun was being regenerated, then there's a site that we've eventually fought for, and we actually got it into the local area plan, which is the first time a city farm has ever been included in a local development plan in Ireland. But there was a site there that just screamed farm to me, and it probably is a throwback to when I was a kid, and I'm sure the farmers didn't welcome us traipsing across their fields, but we enjoyed it. And it was just that sense of knowing instinctively that if children in Ballymun had that access, had that opportunity, had the freedom that came with being out in nature, and that opportunity to interact with farm animals and others within the community, that it would stay with them for life, and it would instill a certain desire for a better world, and they would make an emotional connection that it's difficult to get rid of. Intellectual connections can change and can shift. I think emotional connections stay with you for life. So yeah, that's how I came to it.
Thanks so much. Yeah, and the freedom piece, I think, is massive. Like, and even when you were speaking, Davie, about your youth as a skateboarder, I was thinking in my head, but that's freedom. You know, you didn't have a structure. You had the freedom, and just, yeah, I can relate to you, Stephen, in that I grew up in Galway in the countryside and had fields out my back and could just wander and be in nature without, and it was such, I didn't even know, but it was like I was drawn there, like I needed it. It was like it just brought me peace. And I live in the city in Dublin now, and I have 2 small kids, and I want that for my kids. We're lucky to have the Phoenix Park, and yet without a garden just outside, it's kind of sometimes more of a push than you want it to be to get to nature and to wilder places. And is Anya still with us? Sorry, my view has changed.
Yeah, sorry, I'm here.
Sorry, Anya.
I was thinking about this question. So it's funny, I've been, I grew up in County Meath, rural County Meath, and yeah, same as that. I always talk about how we had what we called an adventure playground, which was really just a stream where the cattle had been going into drink from. So it kind of been, you could get into it. And I can still remember friends coming when I was about 12 or 13, when I went to the secondary school in Ashburn, and I was saying, come to our house this weekend to the adventure playground. And their look of like, just couldn't get over how this was in any way appealing, or, but I'd spent most of my childhood there. So yeah, that piece definitely rings true for me. But I think the reason that I'm still here and still doing this and still interested in it, it comes back to, and it was Julie, I think, who said it, wasn't it, meaningful, that I can see in the kind of work now that we get to do, that I get to do, like I said at the start, I just feel so privileged to work with Burren, is that you can see meaningful change, and supporting people to take meaningful change. And it, as I said, it's no longer just about learning or thinking about things or experiencing them. It's kind of supporting and identifying where people want to make changes, and then doing what we can, small part, a small organization, but trying to find ways to facilitate that change, I think is what keeps me here. So yeah, that's me.
And Amani, yes,
Yeah.
sorry, Amani,
Yeah,
I'd love
just to make it short, that as a Palestinian Mediterranean, we are very connected with the nature. Since we are most of our food is vegetables, and we are using every single thing grow on the floor. That's why we have a grandmom who is living, of course, she's a refugee also in the past. she said, never walk on the grass because they have pain, they have feeling. And always she's talking to us stories that the trees have feeling and they are crying for us if we will not feed them or taking care of them. So, but when I grow up after the high school, I decided to study nutrition science, global nutrition science, which is talking about the cause of poverty around the world. So from there, I started to care about the environment. And until today, I'm feeding my children also the same thing, because it's a humanity, you know, it's normal, it's natural. If you are not connected with the nature, you're not a human, actually. Humanity started with the nature, and saying nature mother is not a game. It's not just a say. It's true. So when you started, you are eating. You can live without technology, but you cannot live without food, which comes from the nature. The only way to get your food from the nature.
Well, thank you.
Nature is everything.
Amani, that's such a beautiful way to finish it. And I'm just conscious as well, we have 2 final webinars. We're only on the 3rd and we have 2 more. And I think, Eileen, are you going to say a little bit about the next webinar, which is on another really, really important theme on minding ourselves? I wonder.
Yeah.
Yes,
I can.
Thank you. You dive in.
Yeah, no problem. So next Friday, 23rd of February, at the same time, 12:30 to 2 o'clock, we'll be looking at minding ourselves, which addresses the question, why is it that people who work in climate action, and I think a lot of people here will relate to this, are at high risk of burnout, and what can be done about it? So Chris Chapman, who's the lead facilitator at Burren College Vart, will be in conversation with Luea Ritter, who is a co-founder of Collective Transformations, which is an international research organisation dedicated to building shared capacities for transformational shifts. And recently, Luea was at COP28, working for the Youth Negotiators Academy, providing training and support for youth representatives, so extraordinarily experienced. So the questions they will be addressing will be, why might people working in climate action be at particular risk of burnout? What do we know about effective approaches to self-care? And what is the role of community in relation to burnout? How might we proactively get better at supporting each other? And what do we need community to be like to support us? So, yeah, join us next Friday. Anybody who's registered for this, the same link will bring you, and you can register for that one as well. Thanks.
Eileen, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your presence and for our amazing speakers. I really appreciate it. I know you're all really busy and took this time to share your experience and perspectives, and we're so grateful. And we hope that whatever we create from this can be of support to you, and also building our networks. That's a really important piece. So we hope to meet you in person at your places, for some place-based learning with, together. So I really appreciate all of your time and presence.